Cool. Hi, guys. So my talk is going to be about basically focused on cryptography as a defensive technology, because that's my area of expertise. How we can take various cryptographic tools that are super powerful and try to find ways to communicate them offensively. And maybe, yeah, just to be clear, this is more like encryption, signatures, EAPs, this sort of thing. Obviously, under the umbrella of like DAC and defensive technologies, there's lots of other stuff going on. And I think how I would personally define cryptography is that it's the art of making things hard to break. In this definition, it is like very inherently a defensive technology. You're literally trying to make tools that is very difficult for adversaries to forge or break into or otherwise sort of damage the integrity of. And I want to look at just a very small set of examples here. This is not comprehensive at all, but at one really prominent use case of privacy-preserving technologies in the wild, which is VPNs. And VPNs, I think, if any of you guys have been to like New York or Chicago or a couple other major American cities, you might have seen these like Mulvad VPN ads everywhere. For context, I personally use Mulvad, so this is not really a dig at them, but a lot of their ads are very sort of like intense cypherpunk kind of vibe of like, you know, like a bit of both like hopeful but also kind of like fearmongery. And I honestly am not sure how successful this has been for them. I definitely know for myself, like I got Mulvad before these ads came on, and like when I do see them in like the subway and the train, I'm like, I always think like, is this like, do people want to see this sort of thing? And like one reference point in my mind that I have is NordVPN, a lot of these other VPNs. This is not actually a ad from them, to be very clear, but if you're a big YouTube user, you know that like Nord and Express, these sort of VPN companies are like major funders of like every YouTuber. And it's really interesting to see how that marketing has changed over the past years. I feel like initially it was very much focused on like, oh, like this will protect you from like, you know, your internet provider seeing your history. And often that's still mentioned, but actually most of the time now, the emphasis of the ad reel is always on like, you can watch Netflix in other countries. You can like do this like new, like you have this new affordance from using this VPN. And that's always kind of like what they like talk about for a little bit longer. And I feel like it is a very good representation of the fact that like I think users will generally respond to things that are value adds and not purely sort of defensive measures against like some sort of like threat. And to be clear, like I'm very much a cypherpunk and I like deeply believe in this technology, but at the same time, I also believe that if we're not able to do this sort of like communication work, we're not going to be able to get users the defense and safety that they deserve. And so I want to talk through just a few different kind of like high-level affordances that I think are worth leaning into and talking about more. The first is the idea that privacy is really ownership. And I think ownership is something that a lot of people feel a lot more viscerally with stuff like, you know, big social medias, like hosting all your photos. You don't own any songs anymore with Spotify, and I think there's a general sense of like, this is something that people like don't have that they wish they did. And in general, I think like one really nice thing is that with cryptographic tools, with signatures, with like signed data on all sorts of different things, you get to actually like own your own data and like have it be verifiable. But then if you want to actually maintain privacy on top of this, like it works hand in hand with other tools like ZK. And really, like if you own something, it is almost to some extent like private to you. Like you should be able to sort of like keep it to yourself unless you want to share it. And a lot of cryptographic tools give you exactly that. Another is the idea of user consent. And this comes up a really interesting way with something called multi-party computation, which is this cryptographic tool where multiple parties get to sort of do a computation on their private data. There's actually a really nice feature where if one of the parties like leaves the protocol or otherwise just decides to like, you know, that they don't want to be a part of it, no result is reached. And I think this is actually a very nice like positive feature where it's usually viewed in a lot of protocols as like a bug, where user consent is almost like mathematically required. And I think this is like an offensive, useful thing that people would be able to understand. Another this idea of portability or interoperability or verifiability, like they're all kind of the same thing. And I think a bunch of really cool use cases of this. Like one is like portable social graphs. This is like an app experience that I've been building with my team where you're essentially tapping different folks and building a private social graph that also you can take with you to other apps as you wish. And I think this is something that a lot of us are feeling now when we're like locked into sort of social medias that aren't really working for us anymore. Another really good example is just all personal data. Stuff like ZK email enables you to take things in your own email and basically make proofs about them, share them with other people in a way that means they don't need to just live in one service. And finally, I think an underrated one is efficiency. There's this new idea that we've been exploring called narrowcasting, which essentially basically, if people do have their own ownership and privacy over their own data, you can basically send messages in a way that will only be read by the people who like match this criteria. And so in a sense, you can actually use cryptography to more efficiently like disperse information in a way that's privacy preserving. Really quick, where you can experience this, we have a booth downstairs, my team Cursive, where we're showing an app experience that has a bunch of these different features baked in. One thing I'll call out is something called private set intersection, which lets you see what you have in common with other folks. And yeah, there's gonna be some more features added in. This is where it is in the booth. And yeah, that's the talk.